people talking about postpartum depression, but very rarely do you hear anyone talking about postpartum anxiety. And I feel like it may be even a more prevalent issue. So for myself, like I suffered with severe postpartum anxiety, and I didn't really expect it or even truly know what it was. I had heard a lot about postpartum depression, and so I feel like I was kind of on the lookout for that, but I did not really expect postpartum anxiety. Since then, I've seen that if you're like a type A, very organized, very structured person, you are pretty likely to have postpartum anxiety, which is the kind of person that I am. For me, I suffered with a lot of different symptoms for postpartum anxiety, but probably the worst was that I literally couldn't sleep. Like when I would lay down and I would start to doze off, I was convinced that my body was stopping breathing. It was so bad that if I tried to lay flat, like how I am right now, my chest would get really heavy and I was convinced that I couldn't breathe. So when I would try to sleep, I was having to like elevate my head, sleep in a recliner. And even then I was only sleeping for maybe 30 minutes at a time before again, I would feel like I couldn't breathe. And obviously I know now that it was like my brain tricking me, but at the time it was so real that I took a COVID test thinking like there has to be a reason that I'm having trouble breathing. And then I think the lack of sleep makes the anxiety worse because I was in labor for like 40 hours and I got very little sleep prior to having my baby. And then even in the hospital, I clearly didn't get a lot of sleep. So when I got home, I wasn't able to sleep at all. So for probably the first like 5 days, I barely slept anything at all. And George was so supportive and like really trying to help. Like he would take the baby and try to let me sleep. But even knowing that he had the baby and that everything was fine with him, I still, the moment that I started to fall asleep, like felt like I couldn't breathe. I think one day I finally slept in the car like while he was driving, and that made it easier for me to sleep like from that point forward. And once I started sleeping, things did get a lot better. But even once I started sleeping, then it was sort of like a whole new fear unlocked. And now I was convinced that the baby had stopped breathing or the cat was like laying on the baby, suffocating him. Like literally my brain would think of the most crazy hypothetical situations that are so unlikely. And I was utterly convinced that it was happening. And for me, it was so real that I would have to go and check if he was actually still breathing. And then even when it wasn't like the nighttime when I was trying to sleep, I was consumed with thoughts of crazy things happening. Like if I was carrying him up or down the stairs in his car seat, I was convinced I was going to drop him. And clearly these are not things that I wanted to happen. They were just like my brain being crazy. So for the first couple of months of his life, I literally only slept for like 2 hours a night. And then most days I was able to take a nap also, but I was running on literally no sleep and my anxiety was just getting worse and worse and worse. But it got so bad for me that I finally had to ask for medication, and honestly, it has gotten so much better since I started. I started off on a really low dose, and then after about a month, I went back and I asked to increase it. And since the increase, honestly, I've had so little anxiety at all. And honestly, it's made me realize how much anxiety I have, like not postpartum, just on a good day. Anyway, I just wanted to share because I was truly unprepared for what postpartum anxiety was going to be like and that it was even really a thing. So if you just had a baby or you're about to have a baby, just keep an eye out, pay attention, and know that there are things you can do that will make it so much better.